Start.
I am so sorry, everyone, but thank you for your patience. I'm really happy to be here. And what I said originally was good morning and thank you for participating. And we'll just jump in. I'm here today to talk about how we are preparing teachers to make sure that CS is accessible to students with disabilities. And the way that we're approaching that is through a team approach with a dual certification program at NYU. And I wanted to mention as I get started that this project is a group project that is a collaboration from special education, math education, and computer science. And my colleagues are Jasmine Ma, who's an associate professor of math education at NYU, and Phyllis Frankel, who's a professor of computer science, and she is emeritus at Tandon Engineering, and I'm in the Department of Special Education at NYU. And Joyce Wu contributed a lot to this presentation, and she's a current teacher in New York City. And she has a dual certification from our program. So we really want to give a shout out to her. She's one of our first graduates. There we go. So that's our team. Our background and rationale, we're going to touch on that and just talk a little bit about how we ended up pairing these two seemingly disparate areas together for certification. And then how we developed the details about the curriculum and the goals and the outcome, and then also our recruitment strategies, and then questions and time for questions and feedback. We are really interested also in hearing from everyone here at this conference about ideas for recruiting, because although we do have some support for students, we are finding it challenging to find people who are coming into the program. So we'll talk about that a bit too. One of the reasons that we got together was that we realized there was a challenge in preparing computer science educators to teach all students, including, and who do we mean when we say all, across all grades. As we know, it's an all grade certification level across all abilities, and thinking about the disabilities that are recognized through IDEA and also Section 504, and then thinking about also all languages. And within that, thinking about some students who are actually dually identified as students with disabilities and students who are multilingual and learning English as another language. And so we think about how students who are receiving these services often have limited opportunities to take electives and also to prepare for college. And this is interesting because the vast majority of students with disabilities do identify college as a major goal of theirs, and yet they might not come out of high school prepared. And it was so great to hear Sherry's presentation this morning, because we draw heavily from the reports that the Research Alliance has prepared about how computer science education is happening in New York City. And we understand that our research relies on their research because we have more than 72 partner schools here in the city. And we're hoping to have a lot of opportunities to have our student teachers have experiences in those schools. And I don't need to rehash, especially because of the technical issues this morning. I don't think it's probably fresh on everyone's mind what Sherry shared this morning. But things that stood out to us included the fact that the early reports showed that there were a lot of positive trends in computer program participation across schools, but for students receiving special education and English learner services, those participants were notably lower than they were for their peers without disabilities or their peers who were not AL identified. And we also noted that teachers expressed that the professional development was beneficial to the development of their expertise in computer science, but that would also be beneficial to their students' achievement. And so in thinking about that, going beyond professional development, we thought about developing an entire program. We were also enthused to understand that the computer science is growing and that more and more students are getting access to the classes. But one of the things that stood out to us is that the Rates were noticeably lower in the secondary grades, as Sherry mentioned this morning, with the enrollments a bit lower for students who had IEPs, and also that in the higher grades, the computer science options were more likely to be standalone and AP programming, which would introduce additional challenges for students with disabilities who are often taking multiple courses to prepare for um, passing some of the requirements that they need to do for a diploma, and they might not have time in their schedule, or teachers might not think about their eligibility in terms of thinking about disability first. So thinking about avoiding deficit perspective of the learners and trying to make sure the courses are ready for them and that the teachers are able to accommodate and modify. And we also finally from Sherry's work and Research Alliance, we also looked at the fact that it was interesting for us to learn that students with autism were more likely to enroll in computer sciences in middle school and high school, and that enrollment in middle school and high school for students with learning disabilities and emotional behavioral disabilities was lower than other students with disabilities. So thinking about how we could alter the curriculum and make sure that we are accommodating for students with those strengths and needs was important. And then thinking about the same questions that Research Alliance has posed in some of their reports regarding the least restrictive environment. So again, how can we expand the opportunities for students with disabilities to come into have more time in their schedule, and also more preparation in the lower grades to be ready to take those classes in middle and high school. So that was the background. And I would mention also, although we don't have a separate slide for this, that part of the background of this collaboration came from part of the background for in this collaboration came from the National Longitudinal Transition Studies. And those studies are national studies of students with disabilities across all disability categories. And they're currently ongoing, but some of the early data shows, as I mentioned just a minute ago, that the majority of students with IEPs think that they're going to college, but whether or not they're actually prepared to go to college is another story. And also from those same studies, we're waiting to see the more recent data, which they haven't released yet, with regard to course taking patterns. So we're interested in understanding nationally what's happening, but those questions are still open, and we're waiting for the data to be released on that. But in anticipation of knowing that there might be limited opportunities, one of the ways that our program decided to address this issue was to look at a dual certification program. So our program is a master's level dual certification program in computer science and special education. And we partnered between our School of Education in Steinhardt and the engineering department in Tandon, and with the New York City Department of Education. And we wrote a grant to get this program covered, and we have been funded by the National Science Foundation through the Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program. And I've linked the scholarship program here in the slides so that I could share the information about the scholarship. But there are many programs across the United States that are supporting computer science through this foundational grant. Our program website is also listed or linked here on this slide. The graduates who leave our program will have a Master's of Arts in Teaching and 2 New York State teaching certificates or certifications. One is the teaching of students with disabilities in grades 7 through 12, and one is teaching computer science in grades K through 12. And so right away from the beginning, when we started collaborating, we had to figure out how we could educate across all grades for computer science and educate across the middle and upper grades for students with disabilities. But as most of you, I'm sure everyone on this participating in this is well aware, those requirements for students with disabilities are changing. And so there will be a K-12 certification once again. So going back to some of the ways that we've done things previously. So there'll be more of a grade alignment, and I'll show you the curriculum in just a minute. But this program is one of our transformational teaching programs that offer MATs. And again, we were focusing on secondary educators, but we have expanded that for this program specifically. So our recruitment pools right now, yes, our recruitment pools right now include computer science students who are considering becoming teachers, career changers in computer science who are interested in education, pre-service educators who are interested in another certification area, and we might try to woo them over, and educators who are interested in teaching computer science and teaching students with disabilities. Who might not be eligible for NOIS funding. So I mentioned that the NOIS program is funding our scholars, and we'll talk about those specifics in a minute. But the program is open to anyone in these four groups. Our current NYU undergrads receive $25,000, $15,000 in their senior year, and $10,000 in their MAT year. And our career changers receive $10,000 in their MAT year. And those are stipulations from the NOIS fellowship, and there's more information in the link that I provided. But the other thing to note about the NOIS is that the students who come into the program have to have quite a bit of background in computer science before they can be considered. So related majors are, we're drawing from only the computer science pool for the most part. So this grid shows what our curriculum and course sequence looks like, and you can see that it's about a 14-month program. It starts one summer, and in that summer, participants take a couple of general requirements, and the first one being inquiries in teaching and learning. But the adolescence learners will have to expand now that we're going from 7 to 12 in special education to K-12. But that is going to be a general learning in urban context courses. And then anything else that they take in computer science content during the summer, anything of their choosing that fits that description in the computer science program. And then in the fall, they take a deep dive into math ed and continue their computer science learning and how to teach computer science. And also, they continue with their special education courses, including an introductory course where they just learn about what the legal and policy requirements are for special educators, who gets services, how they become eligible, and so on. And then also the methods of instruction for students with high incidence disabilities. And so in that course, we're talking about things like universal design and making sure that accommodations and modifications are generally accessible for students across categories. And they're commonly used. These are methods that would be commonly used in ICT settings, for example. And then they also fulfill their requirement in drug and alcohol education, child abuse identification, and school violence prevention, which is a requirement, as you all know. In the winter, they take an interim course in the assessment of children with disabilities, where they talk about eligibility, but also they go over assessment tools for students with disabilities on teacher-made assessments and standardized assessments both. And they also talk a lot about testing accommodations in that course. And the students who take these courses are in placements, so they'll have opportunities, especially in the interim course, they'll have opportunities to apply what they're learning and work with their collaborating teachers in schools to better understand the topics that they're learning in the university classroom. And then in the spring, they take a course in special education about the learning environment, how to manage behavior, and how to understand behavior that is commonly associated with students with disabilities in terms of just making sure that the class is engaging and that we address attention issues and any kind of behavior issues that might pop up there. And they continue with their math education, 2 additional courses there, and including an advanced topics course in computer science education. And then they start their official student teaching um, uh, semester at that time. But they do have their assignments and student teaching exposure before that official one in the fall and one in the spring. And then in the final summer is the methods of instruction for students with low incidence disabilities. And also a language and literacy course finishes up that summer. So this is our curriculum for the dual certification. And our original goal, we were very ambitious when we started this project, and our original goal was to support cohorts of 30 students annually. And that's also what our grant allows us to, can fund up to 30 students annually. However, that's one of the places where we really are hoping to get ideas today, because we haven't been able to draw that many students into the program. We think it's important because, as Sherry shared with us earlier, there are lots of schools looking for teachers of computer science, and we know that every year there are shortages in special education as well. And it also aligns with our larger program goals that we want to make sure that special education teachers have some content specialization and knowledge of a specific content area. In this program, it happens to be computer science, but we have many dual certification programs at NYU. And then we also want to make sure that our content specialists know how to do things like individualize, participate, and collaborate in inclusive settings, and have quite a bit of information about disability at their fingertips. And that's why we make sure that the program is situated with multiple field experiences, so that they have one devoted to their gen ed certification area and one devoted to their special education certification area. And we also do focus our curriculum on designing universal. Our lessons are designed with universally designed educational approaches, so that we want to make sure that we're gathering, addressing the needs of all students, but then also how to individualize and extend accommodations and modifications for students with disabilities. And then finally, we try to make sure that the students have opportunities during the course of their program to understand collaboration with other colleagues and professionals, related service providers, other teachers, and also to develop critical thinking skills about who makes a good candidate for the computer science electives and programs in the upper grades, and then also how to integrate computer science into courses for all students across levels. So we are in year 3 of our 5-year award, and our greatest achievement so far is that our graduates have been consistently sought after and have accepted teaching positions upon graduation. And that's been really exciting for us to see. I mentioned Joyce Wu earlier, who is a New York City school teacher. But our greatest challenge relates to the fact that we have had a really challenging time finding a population who is really ready to pursue this dual certification. So our experts in our undergraduate programs, the experts with computer science course background who want to pursue teaching are few in number. And part of that are things that are outside of our control, such as the salary differentials between their computer science professional opportunities and teaching. But our thinking is maybe they might be gravitating toward education if we can have them come in and see what it is like. So we do try to offer them experiences that, through volunteer experiences, coming to our courses, and seeing some after-school clubs that we're partnering with around the city, so that they can understand a little bit of context about what they would do if they added education to their computer science degrees. And then also we've had a really challenging time finding qualified career changers with computer science backgrounds. So that is what we are really striving for right now, is working on that. Our recruitment strategies thus far have been to participate in all the recruitment strategies that teacher education programs do, but also to make sure that we are advertising ourselves, because it is an unusual program and it is a new program and it is a funded program. So partially funded, that is. So we do try to make sure that we maintain presence on social media and just create an awareness in general of the idea that students with disabilities might actually be great candidates for computer science in school, and then also after, beyond K-12 education. And then, as I mentioned a moment ago, we've been developing these workshops with partners to support the undergraduates' experiences working directly with K-12 students with disabilities. And in the workshops, they do programming activities with school clubs and groups to kind of get a hands-on experience to, try to whet their curiosity and to help them see what it might be like if they pursued this as a career option. So I have included some links in this slide deck, and I want to make sure with Tom, I'm sharing the slide deck for people to be able to access the links, but I'd also love to hear feedback from you all. I can see from the chat that there are lots of people here with lots of experience, and maybe we could just start to have a discussion. And I want to also thank everyone for sticking with me through the challenges that I was having with the microphone. I also should have mentioned this in the beginning, but neither of my colleagues could join me for this presentation, and I'm not great at following the chat, and I hope that I didn't miss any questions. But if you do have a question, please go ahead and let me know, and I will address it now. I liked the comment from Wally. Thank you. Thank you for reminding us that, practitioners with disabilities understand this from a firsthand perspective and encourage their students to take lots of electives. And we also recognize that sometimes students with disabilities have limited access to school counselors, because the IEP teacher is sort of thought of as a school ex post facto sort of kind of helper in planning for life after high school. So they might have limited access of even knowing about computer science options in the upper grades. And I'm having to shift my monitor around a little bit. Yes, I think that you are absolutely correct, Virginia. The number of people who are looking for, we have so many shortages in special education in particular. And so we are up against a lot with the shortages. However, we still think we might be able to do a better job of recruiting. And one of our ulterior motives of participating in today's conference was to figure out how we can borrow from other strategies. So I'm really excited to learn. I see some transition specialists, and I also see some other certification specialists from other universities. So if you all have ideas on recruitment, maybe sharing those would be, helpful, and maybe we could have a conversation about that as well. If anyone could pop in the chat any ideas for if you've seen computer science teachers wanting information about students with disabilities, because another way to address some of what we're trying to do with this program could be some professional development and making connections. It's been wonderful to make the connection with Tom and try to become more active in the community so that we can share the kinds of things that we do in our coursework to promote how to address computer science curricula using strategies for educating students with disabilities. We have not gone, thank you, Wally. We have not gone to that. I like how you have quotes around retired practitioner communities, but we have not done that thus far. I think one of the challenges we're having is figuring out how to get additional support for our students too. I think you may have noticed on a previous slide that the undergraduates receive more financial support from the Noyce Foundation, and that's again a stipulation from the way our Noyce grant runs, than do the career changers. And so the career changers receive $10,000 for that year of study, and the undergraduates receive 25,000. Other comments or questions from the group? I'm not sure if many of you know Meg Ray, but I want to give a shout out for her because she's been running our workshops, and we've done a lot of those workshops with Tech Kids Unlimited. I'm not sure if we have the raise your hand function visible, but if you don't know about the Tech Kids Unlimited, I would really recommend that you Google that. It's a partnership with Tandon, and it is a great program for students. Oh, yay, Ray. Thank you. Ray, do you have a link handy that you could pop in for people to get more information about Tech Kids? Because I just think so much of it. And in Tech Kids, older students with disabilities have worked to develop computer science skills as in a club sort of environment. And that's where we've been able to do some of our workshops and attract teachers or potential teachers so that they can see what it would be like to teach. Because many of the students in computer science who might be interested have not had a lot of exposure to teaching unless they've done that as like community service or in other other jobs outside of school. Oh, thank you, Ray. I really appreciate that connection. I think with all of the technology challenges this morning that I was having, I zoomed through my slides. So I'm happy to go back and check in with some of you with any questions that anybody has. But I see that we have 20 minutes left for this session. Maybe a break is at hand for those of you who don't want to stick around. But I guess one of the things that I kind of smoothed over or speeded through was this issue of transition. So I am a researcher who studies transition from high school to adulthood. And that's really where one of the interests popped up for us, was because we know, again, I mentioned that so many students with disabilities want to go to college, but they leave high school underprepared. And one of the sources of that is that they might not be engaged in courses that develop their interests. And so their direction and choices for what to do after high school are not fully developed by the time their senior year rolls around, or by the time graduation rolls around. So that was another place of inspiration for us in terms of developing this program. Any questions? I'm going to take a minute because I wanted to go back to the curriculum so that everybody had a longer minute to look at it. I think, one of the things that people really take into consideration with master's degrees right now is obviously the cost. So we do have the Noyce grant to offset the cost, but we do have to work towards sustainability because it is a 5-year program. And one of the ways that we have done that, and I'm interested if my colleague at Adelphi, I see somebody here from Adelphi, that and anybody from other universities too, if you're really grappling with this issue of students making decisions about master's programs and also having so limited time. So this is 38 points and 14 months. It's very heavy hitting in terms of just being a really intense program. From that first summer, they're taking 3 courses, which summer courses meet every day, and they are intense. And then right through fall, winter, and spring, they're in courses every one of those sessions, and they've got a student teaching in the fall and a student teaching in the spring. So most of their courses are offered at night, so their days are quite long and it's pretty intense. Then they finish at the end of the next summer or sometime in the midsummer, depending on our scheduling. But the reason that we set the program up this way, and this is true of our other MAT programs, is to address that length of program concern where people are really needing to get out into the workforce, which does work for schools if we have lots of people in the program, because schools are looking for fully certified teachers in these shortage areas. On the other hand, it makes for an intense program, and it's not for everyone because you are working pretty much, you're up in the morning as student teachers in both the fall and the spring, and then you probably finish your courses around 7 or 8 at night. And like I said, it can be intense. Are there any ideas, I'm curious, from the audience about how to reach and how to think about those career changers? I go to the chat to see if anybody's popping in with ideas. One of the things that Tom and I talked about was thinking about people who are experiencing layoffs in the tech industry. And so that's something that we're exploring this year as, as trying to make connections between our fields. And I will say that it's a big challenge. Thank you, everyone, for attending this session. I don't see anything popping up in the chat and don't know if others. Oh, let's see. Yes, thank you, Tom. I agree. I think there are a lot of people with interest in teaching, and we do try to publicize it. Thanks, Wally. We do try to publicize the programs. And that's why we mentioned in one of the previous slides that one of our recruitment strategies has been to be as visible as possible in social media. But, it's not, we're not sure that we're getting to the right audience, those people who do have that interest. And we think about the tech industry or in any industry, really, a lot of people leave jobs for teaching when they feel like they've had a full career and they're kind of burnt out and they want to try something that's more, hands-on and involving, especially if they have an interest in working with kids. So we try to reach out and provide testimonials. We do have some graduates from the program who are out there in the schools and really enjoying their jobs, but we are just finding it to be very challenging. This year, for example, our cohort is a cohort of 3. So if you think about we have enough funding for 30 and we have 3, that can be a little disheartening, and we're still really looking to how to publicize it. I was able to attend a national conference, and it is not something that's specific to NYU. We found that there's shortages all over the United States in teaching just in general right now, which I'm sure many of you are well aware about those issues, but also specifically in STEM and specifically in computer science. And then special ed has consistently had a shortage ever since its inception. So all of those things are, raising the bar and making the challenge a little bit greater. Tom, I had a question. If you're still in this session, I think you are. Can you, hi. Can you remind me how to memorialize the slides for everyone? Because I did include the links to the program in the slides. Can you download them, or?
Is it a PowerPoint?
I use Google Slides.
Oh, then you can just send the link in the chat.
Oh, great.
As long as it's shared. Ooh, excuse me. As long as it's open for all to view.
Okay, that's great. And it's not possible to have a verbal conversation with the participants right now, right?
Oh, it is. If anyone wants to come on stage, you can just press the Ask to Come on Stage button.
Thanks.
Or ask to share audio and video button. And then in the moderation tab, we can let you in.
Maybe no one wants to jump in, but I think I really was looking forward to having the opportunity to talk about how
Matt's coming in.
Oh, thank you, Matt.
Wally's coming in.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Hey, Matt.
Hey, great to hear about your program.
Thank you.
Hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm also worried that
we
no
can
one
hear
will
you.
hear me.
Oh yeah, you're good.
So, like we're definitely having some of the same problems at Adelphi with recruitment. It's really hard to get qualified people, and it's even harder for you guys doing the dual cert. So, I appreciate that, even with funding for it. One of the problems too, like I'm looking at your program and thinking about my program, getting enough computer science where you're really confident in the graduates, and trying to teach them special ed and attracting people that don't have an education background. How's that going? I guess is my question.
Well, I think it's the way that we've tried to make this really rigorous is to make sure that we're following the students with the undergraduate in computer science. So they're coming in with a pretty strong background, or a really strong background. But then when they get into our program, those math ed courses aren't just any math ed course. The ones that Jasmine is teaching are really focused. And it's not just Jasmine who's teaching them, but the ones that are listed on this curriculum plan are really focused on math education and computer science education. And so that's, we're trying to make sure that those with the previous background in computer science now are also extending that, but with the eye toward educational methodology. So that's kind of what we're doing to address that. But the bigger challenge, I think, is getting people with that background to come into an education program. It's just a lot of people haven't thought about that before, that was the genesis behind the workshops. Because a lot of people, especially when you say disability, I think, for the inquiries that we were getting were showing that the students who might be interested in teaching were a little bit scared of disability, or they maybe thought of disability as being a certain, they were maybe stereotyping like, oh, what kind of disability? Or they would ask, what do you mean by disability? So by doing the workshops, we were able to introduce through the club participation experiences for people who are interested to find out what that would be like and who might participate and what kinds of learners they might encounter. And it was really demystifying, and it was in a way for us to try to flip the idea of deficit notions about what kids with disabilities can accomplish.
Economically, I think it's a big ask to ask someone who can become a programmer or lead architect in or work for a startup and make a fortune. Take a chance on making a fortune. I mean, you can make a few tries in a lifetime, and that's one reason I think that maybe recruiting from the retired community would help, because they already are financially stable and they probably don't have student loans to work off. And
I love that idea,
a lot
Wally,
of,
but can you like, how would we find those people?
I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
I guess LinkedIn would be the best approach, because we don't necessarily participate in other social media. But there's so much noise, so many advertisements on LinkedIn, that I think it would be a challenge. That's why I mentioned professional associations like the ACM and the IEEE.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
One
Thank
thing
you.
I think is that a lot of us are still really enthusiastic about computer science, and I think that goes a long way.
I do too.
And unfortunately, I think a lot of practitioners are not members of IEEE and ACM.
Oh,
So, yeah,
yeah,
I
and
don't know.
that makes sense. And also, I think, depending on where you are in retirement, you may not maintain those memberships over time.
That's true. Yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that we were thinking about is that some of the salary differentials and concerns that people have might be, mitigated by the fact that people are really interested in education. But I think that the idea of having educating people with disabilities on top of that, we really have to work hard to address the stereotypes that people might have about disability. And a lot of the stereotypes that people bring to the table really aren't about disability as much as they are about their own feeling of, oh, how am I going to learn to do that? Isn't it going to be really challenging? And so I think that addressing that through our workshops has been successful, but they're also, we have limited capacity to do that. So it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for attending. It's 5 till, so I want to make sure that you have time to go to your next session. And I also still have to pick my next session. So hopefully I'll see you there. But thank you so much for your attention, and please visit our website and reach out to anyone on the project. Our information is on the website, and we would love to hear from you if you have ideas, or if you want to refer someone to the program. If you know of someone, please help us get the word out. Thank you very
Thanks. This
much.
was very interesting.
Thank you.